Thanks, Caroline. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rob Black. I'm the COO of ESL UK, and welcome to the panel of UK Esports, a land of opportunity. I think the first thing I'm going to ask is for everybody to introduce themselves. I think we've got a really good panel today representing a diverse range across UK esports and people interested in the space here. So take it away.
Cheers, mate. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Woodward, and I'm one of the co-founders of Code Red Esports, which is a full-service esports agency. We originally started out as a talent agency and represented some of the players in esports. But in the last few years, we really have worked quite closely with non-endemic brands to bring them into the esports space.
This should be working. Thanks, Rob, for having us. I'm Florian Block. I'm the lead for esports research at the Digital Creativity Labs at the University of York. We are the largest games research hub in the UK, 30 academics and 50 PhD students, all passionate about games and innovation. And yeah, so as James said earlier, we were very excited about data, and we have people from across machine learning, user experience design, game design, interactive data visualization, really trying to unlock this value of the data for people, and we were very pleased to be part of this.
Thanks, Flo. Thanks, Rob. I'm Ian Congdon. I'm the head of venue sales for the NEC Arenas, which includes this fantastic facility that we're in for ESL One and Genting Arena out at the NEC site. We are the second busiest arena business in the world currently. We sell in the region of about 1.6 million tickets across many different genres, and I'm delighted to say I'm one of the newest members of the esports and gaming community in the room, because I think, as has been suggested, this is a massive potential area for us all, and we're really delighted to welcome you all and ESL, everybody in the room to Birmingham for this fantastic first for us. I think the exciting thing for me is we're all part of history here, and I think sometimes I have to stop and think, pinch myself to think we are actually making history here with a first for the UK and for Birmingham. So I'm grateful to you all for that. Cheers, Rob.
My name is Roy Meredith. I work for an organisation called the West Midlands Growth Company. We're an organisation that provides free support and services across a range of sectors. I'm responsible for tech and digital, and my job is to boost the economy of the tech and digital sector across Birmingham and the West Midlands by helping companies to locate here and helping them to grow. We provide a wide range of services, which I won't go into now because there's far too many of them. My background is, previous to this, I spent nearly 20 years working in gaming. I worked for EA, partly for Sony, Square Enix, and a number of others. So unlike Ian, I'm probably the oldest gamer in the room, unfortunately. So having ESL here and the Dota 2 event is not only professionally of great interest to me, but a personal passion of mine as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Dan Wood. I'm COO at Yuki. Yuki represents about 400 of the UK's games and interactive entertainment businesses, including most of the leading businesses in esports. So we've got ESL, we've got IP owners like Riot, Hi-Rez, we've got up-and-coming IP makers like Roll7, making Laser League, looking to try and get into esports, build their games with esports in mind. Teams, Team Dignitas, and so on. So lots of esports businesses that we represent. I guess the reason I'm here is I am the lead of Yuki's esports subgroup, which has got about 70 businesses who all said they're interested in or active in esports in the UK. I'm the author of Yuki's esports white paper, which was the first attempt to look at the opportunities and landscape within the UK for esports. I also, just to give you an idea of some of the stuff we're doing, I was the main lead on the response to the Gambling Commission's inquiry into esports and gambling. I'm also part of the team that has successfully held the recent Digital Schoolhouse Esports Schools Tournament, which I hope we can talk about later as well.
Thank you very much, everybody. So first off, I'd quite like to talk about UK esports and past context. We've had quite a storied history in esports, actually, in the UK, surprisingly. Some people might think that we are lagging behind the rest of the world, and we are, but there are a few reasons for that. And the first person that I'm going to ask a question to is Ben. Could you give us some context as to what's happened in the past in the UK, like where are the spaces that we've used for esports, and perhaps why maybe we're a little bit behind some of the rest of the world?
Sure. So we're in a situation now where, well, this is obviously the biggest event that's ever been held in this country, essentially. If you turn the clocks back 20 years, just some context, my first event I went to would have been in like 1999 maybe, or the 2000s. I would have been about 14 at the time, and it was literally just me and like about 15 people in a room just connecting our computers together, and we thought, that's brilliant. It wasn't even called esports back then. It didn't have a name. I think we called it cyber athletics for a while, which was mildly depressing to think about now. Yeah, cyber sports was another one. But no, like going back, if you go back 15 odd years, what we're now 2018, so 2002, 2003, there was very little. We were already miles behind in terms of the broadband infrastructure. People, countries like Sweden already had like 100 meg up, 100 meg down. I was still on my 56k modem, and I couldn't keep up with any of those guys. They were light years ahead of me. So the only way I could get a like-for-like experience was to go to these like internet cafes around the country. And there was a boom for a while. So a very well-known UK personality by the name of Suja O'Roy, who is stood up at the back of that room there, basically pioneered all of this by setting up something called IG UK, which was a group of internet cafes around the UK. You'd go to IG UK and you'd find where your nearest LAN cafe was, and you could go down and you could play with your mates, and you just had a whale of a time. He then went on from there to set up something called GamerBase, which was a similar concept, but it had a bit more clout behind it. This was run by Game, and it now essentially is Belong. It's kind of morphed into what Belong is around the UK, which is 19 internet cafes. And we didn't really have much in a way of offline events. If you wanted to meet up with a friend, you'd basically have to go to multiplay, and that was it. Now, during that time, I used to run a team called Four Kings, who was sponsored by Intel. So we had a nice, juicy budget. We'd fly around the world and take part in tournaments all around the world. For about 7 years, we didn't go to a UK event because there just wasn't anything. So all of a sudden, obviously, you fast forward to today, and in the last 3 years, there's been some sort of crazy boom, which is fantastic. It's about time it's happened. Why didn't it happen like 10 years ago when I had a very successful team that was making lots of money? I'd love lots of sponsorship. I want to be a millionaire. I should have sold my team. But yeah, no, we're in a fantastic place right now. We definitely weren't even like 4 years ago. No one would have contemplated putting on an event of this scale in the UK, even 2 years ago, let alone 4 years ago. So yeah, it's very exciting times at the moment.
Thanks, Ben. I think that obviously the UK is the second largest gaming market in Europe. So I think that that realization is starting to come across that the market here is excellent, and that's part of this panel today. So where are we now? We've got the NEC Group here, who Ian, you've got really this event, and also you talk to Multiplay quite a lot to run Insomnia. Could you talk a little bit about sort of how you see esports for you guys and the potential for the NEC Group?
Yeah, I think it's been on our radar for a couple of years. I think maybe we had the impression that esports and gaming events were happening at a much smaller scale in the UK. We look to examples in Fulham Broadway, Gfinity, for instance, and smaller scale theatres. That size events, I think we're conscious of the potential. We look around the world, and in some of the other territories that we see in the US and Asia, there's larger scale gaming events going on there. So why wouldn't it work in the UK was our thought, and how we actually go about attracting it was the next thought. I think from our relationship with event organisers at the NEC, they use the NEC exhibition halls to run Insomnia and EGX. We're obviously aware of the developments in those events and how they've been used and developed. And so some of those events they provide camping as well as cosplay elements. It's not just all about gaming. There's some exhibition as well. There's gaming. There's panels. There's education. I think that's a really important element that we'll discuss in a moment. But for us as the NEC Group, we're developing an esports strategy now to see how we can continue to work with yourselves as partners in bringing about a successful event this weekend, a return in 2019, and we look at the other opportunities that are out there. There's no reason why there couldn't be an IEM in the UK we'd be up for that as well. So that's firmly on our radar, and part of our conversation will be about how we harness our potential in the market, how we can help it grow with yourselves and with other event organisers. I think one of the things that we've got really to consider and what we've discovered by working with yourselves is what's needed, what the components are, and Roy will talk a little bit in a while about the wider West Midlands involvement and the government involvement, the educational aspects I think Flo will come on to, but not just venue infrastructure and what our capabilities are for IT, connectivity, the public experience. That's our speciality. We do that day in, day out. So I think we can really look to help each other with our experiences to help us give our customers a fantastic experience and have them wanting to come back. I think the biggest challenge for us has been particularly IT. I think some issues around air conditioning and keeping servers cool and things like that our venues just don't have at the moment. So we'll be looking to how we can invest in our technology and infrastructure to better support you in future as well.
Roy, how does that kind of fit into the wider West Midlands piece as for esports as an opportunity for a location here in the UK?
Well, I think there's definitely enthusiasm here. To clarify, we're funded by public and private sector, so we're not a local government organisation, although we have a lot of connections with local government. I think James mentioned that Andy Street, our regional West Midlands mayor, was very keen to see this happen and offered support initially via publicity, etc., and actually wanted to be here today. And I think there's a lot of local and government support for esports and recognises the value of it. And I think that you see the figures from the Katowice stuff. I think that there's a great opportunity both within the UK and particularly within the West Midlands. I have a personal ambition, I think, that I'd love to see this region become the home of esports for the UK. Obviously, there's economic benefits, but I said there's a personal interest as well. But I think it matches the profile of the region. So when James put up that figure that it had sold out in record time, was the fastest selling, I wasn't surprised, and I shouldn't be, because all the figures I've got and everything I preach to people and sort of evangelise about this region matches that it should be. Anything I say has to be verified by research. I can't invent anything. But Birmingham is the youngest core city in terms of population in the whole of Europe. 40% of its population is under the age of 25. It's the most diverse core city in the whole of Europe. We have over 100 different nationalities in this city. According to Stack Overflow report published in February, we have more software developers and software architects than anywhere else in the UK outside London. We have more tech companies in the West Midlands than any other region in the UK outside London. And I always get fed up of saying outside London. So we have the fastest growing economy in the UK, including London. So I think that and actually, here's my favourite stat. Okay, according to Indeed and CV Library, they do an ongoing research. You can look it up online. It's about disposable incomes for average salaries. And I'm not knocking London because you can tell from my accent I'm born and bred and I love the capital. But I know how expensive it is, and that's one of the reasons I moved out. The average disposable income on an average salary in London at the moment is £75 per calendar month after living expenses. In Birmingham, it's £1,030. The average price of a property in Birmingham is £187,000. So all that youthful aspect, all that nurturing of startups and scale-ups and technology, and people have got money to spend. So I have no surprise it's sold out whatsoever. And I think that as you grow as an industry, and as ESL grows, I think and with the support of people like the NEC, I think there's a massive land of opportunity here for you guys to do it. And we know how well connected it is. So there, I think your opportunity lies here. And that's my sales pitch over. I promise just to talk about gaming from now on.
Dan, obviously you have a lot of touch points here in the UK with different game developers and tournament organisers such as ourselves. Do you think that we're not very good at shouting about ourselves from an esports point of view?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, as I said, we wrote this white paper that we published 18 months ago, and part of the process of that was going out to the sector and saying, what are the opportunities, what are the barriers? So we looked at everything from funding, immigration, broadband, demographics, and so on. And actually the consensus was that actually the ingredients were already there to a certain degree. It was an anomaly that the UK wasn't actually doing better in esports. It's got an amazing ingrained culture of video games. We're a nation of early adopters. We've got a kind of sporting tradition. We've got world-class broadcasters, production, advertising on our doorstep. So all the foundation was there. And so then we looked at what needed to happen to kind of make that snowball. And I think what it was this, people need to shout about it. More people need to know about it, and everyone needs to just tell anyone who is interested, whether that's venues, local authorities, MPs, just anyone about it and the opportunities. But I think let's go back to it, but without trying to overinflate the bubble, actually, but just give a truthful, factual explanation of the opportunities that esports presents to the UK. And the other thing that again, it came up in both the previous bits, especially in the community one, was actually growing the opportunity from the ground up. So, making sure you've got the next wave of stars coming through as players, but also making sure you've got the right highly skilled people to come and, as it does grow, to actually work in the industry, again, without flooding the market with jobs. But so start balancing out, but it was absolutely right. I think it's a question of shouting about it. I think now, through a lot of collective efforts and lots of people are shouting about it, which is good. We've obviously got what's happening here, which is absolutely incredible. We've got the ECS final happening. Got what's Gfinity getting more money invested. So it's really starting to happen. And I think not that there was a sort of prophecy that's come true, but it was those ingredients were there, and by collectively amplifying everything that's going on is really starting to have an effect. But still not much more to go. Look at what happens with you guys in Katowice. You can see the real potential there.
Yeah, I just want to come back to the point that you made about pathways for jobs and skills, and hand that over to Florian, who can speak, I think, from a university point of view. We've obviously been working together now for almost 2 years, and we've set up the elective module for master's students. You're probably best placed to talk about that and what access that gives for people interested in the industry, and how they can go to university and get some great skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in many ways, it's amazing that we got away with not being part of this for the longest time. And I think we've got a lot of catching up to do. But we're starting to create these formalizing or contributing to formalizing these career paths, which so far don't exist. There's no formalized, if you're a child in school, all the way to having a good paying job. There's really very little, and so far it's the passion that carried people into the positions that they're in. So I think we're very excited about the teaching. We're also very excited about the research associated jobs and initiatives that are going to start. So just around the corner here on Tuesday was a meeting from the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund by the government, 33 million pounds, funding essentially projects of innovations between industry stakeholders and academia, realizing that really sort of the next disruptive set of technologies in esports, they will involve really tough problems. They will involve data. They will involve knowing a lot of people, being able to study people, having technologies such as machine learning help people be creative and create really new interactive experience for people. And sort of these schemes are just sort of the start of a set of opportunities where, as universities, we're very excited to work with industry. And I think there's a lot to come.
Great, thank you. I think, from our side at ESL, education has been something that we've been focusing on, which is why we've been talking to Florian. The UK has an amazing higher education market here, and we've wanted to create degree programs or modules that tack on to existing courses that are fantastic, world-leading courses, to be able to access talent and bring them into the industry. I think that's something that the UK can really lead globally.
Yeah, maybe to illustrate this. So, for instance, at York we have programs in film and TV production and in interactive media and computer science. And really the exciting thing about esports here is really lies at this convergence of all of these. So in many ways, you have to consider, academic frameworks and sort of industry demands from across this industry. People, our students need to be able to juxtapose tools from across, understand the audience, so we are also a lot into games culture. You have to understand what the first panel has brought out so clearly, that this is all about the audience, this is all about the community. And I think this is really sort of the first time that we're shaping an educational offering that is so varied in the different inputs, from all the way from end users actively participating, so the fans, industry pioneers such as yourselves, then technology companies, and our own research-driven sort of approach that sort of in the space of innovation. And I think that's what's really exciting about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've established that obviously there's a lot of opportunity here. Does anybody want to sort of put their hand up and say how they think the UK can best start to exploit that opportunity, and what sort of the pathway next should be for us? Obviously, we've got tentpole events coming this year, that mega events such as the CS Major. We've got RLCS as well, World Finals. But is that the next step, or we need to look at some other things as well to get down?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's probably the opposite end of the spectrum to that, but touching on that, growing from the grassroots up, I think there's a lot that we've done that can enable the participation to grow by enabling people to host their own events. So when you think about esports, anywhere can become an esports venue to a certain degree. We've had people approach us from, what I mean by that, we've had school classrooms, we've had people approach from a disused industrial workshop in Newcastle, and we've had Trafalgar Square contact us. So there's a whole range of things there, but what they all kind of lack is the knowledge to know anything, from a school. What kind of spec PCs do you need? You were saying about aircon and broadband capability. Trafalgar Square, they just didn't have a clue. They just heard the word esports. But what an opportunity to put an esports on Trafalgar Square, which didn't happen this year, probably due to a lack of knowledge on their behalf. That was actually around age ratings in video games more generally. They got a bit anxious about that because they didn't know about it. So I think there's a lot of work you could actually do to kind of free people up without kind of, again, overinflating this bubble. You could give people the information they need to know how to host a small esports tournament in their school, for example, or to convert a local cinema or whatever it is into an esports venue. And that's just information. I think that's something we can provide fairly easily to start growing it from the grassroots up.
Roy?
I think there's an opportunity as well from top down as opposed to grassroots up, and I agree with everything that was just said. But I think there is a benefit for national government and for public sector and for private sector to work more closely together and involved with UKI as a trade body and bring things together. I'm pleasantly surprised and think it's absolutely fantastic that there's somebody from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport here today, and that shows that the government takes this esports sector very, very seriously. So I think that it needs to be brought together across academia, public sector, private sector, and organisations such as UKI to grow and nurture that encouragement. I also think there's an awareness issue that those organisations need to deal with as well, and I don't want to make it too anecdotal, but when James sent around the first streams from yesterday, I work in an office which is full of lots of different people, lots of different cultures, and lots of different backgrounds, and the stream went round and everybody was fascinated by it, and somebody came up to me and said, "Can you just explain what esports is?" And that is genuine, and I cannot say who that is because I will get absolutely slaved when I get back into the office. But I do think there is that. Games has always been. I'm biased because I was in it for so long. Games has always been at the cutting edge of so many things in terms of both technology and commerciality. Music and film and TV and newspaper publishing didn't crack free for years. Games industry did. and pave the way for it. And in terms of the adaptation to new technologies as well, games has always been cutting edge, and this is the new cutting edge of games, and we need to make it work. So I think bringing in people at the top level as well is vitally important.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a challenge of establishing what it is, and when we're talking to all sections of the community, just to get an understanding and maybe an acceptance that maybe they challenge the stereotypes. It isn't about people sitting in bedrooms, not socially interacting with each other. We're here with 7,000 people per day over 3 days this weekend. That's a really unique opportunity for that community to engage with each other. And I think it follows on that it's really important that we engage with each other as the organisers, the venues, and use our specialities to nurture what we've got and make the right decisions, because I think we've got it right. We agonised about ticket prices initially, James, I know when we first talked about it, and I think we got that right this time. The cheapest entry point for a ticket was £19, the most expensive was £129, and you got additional benefits and better seats. So I think when you put that into the context of a relatively new product, people like ELO are charging those sorts of figures. Maybe they wouldn't do maybe £19, but it's up there. 129 quid is what people pay for a top-line concert these days. And I try and think of, when I'm talking about it to colleagues to explain what esports is, I try and maybe think about the comparison between an artist developing its career in an environment like this and starting off in a smaller venue and although, yes, here we are in an arena, but how we take that forward from this point on, managing ticket prices, managing the frequency of the events, the expectation that we have on that community to continue to support these, I think is critical to this. And I think we've got all of the knowledge in this room to be able to make a really good success of it. So I think that's what I'm really looking forward to and most excited about.
Yeah, well, firstly, I want to just go back quickly to 10 minutes to where the honourable gentleman to my left was saying that Birmingham is the one of the greatest cities in the world. It is. I'm a local Brummie. I literally live 5 minutes away. Code Red is basically based here as an agency. We employ people out of Birmingham, and it's just fantastic finally to have a massive global event take place in Birmingham.
Checks in the post.
Yeah, and about the disposable income, that's correct. Just to let you know. So in terms of like where esports is going to be or how we can help in the UK, there's a couple of points. I'll touch on them briefly. The education part, I completely agree with Daniel. Like from a grassroots level, once upon a time, believe it or not, I did actually play physical sports. I actually broke my neck when I was 15. That's one of the reasons why I basically had to stop playing, but that's a different story. So I used to play, and I knew that when I was like 12, 11, around that age, there was potential that I could be spotted. And you knew that you had a path to potentially become like a professional, as it were, and get involved through the grassroots system. And I knew I wasn't very good because by like 14, my friends had gone off for like a trials with Blackburn and West Bromwich Albion. But at least I knew the path I had to take. And if you take that analogy, you can do something similar with the smaller venues around the UK, the school stuff. If they want to put on a tournament, it's not that difficult at that level to make it happen. There's just a checklist of technical requirements and that sort of thing. So there's a big educational part to this. On a grander scale, from the top-down level, as an agency, as Code Red, we are having conversations with companies from around the world and in the UK about basically putting on events in the UK. What's the best way of going around it? Like half of these people, they don't understand the fundamentals of putting an event on, the ABCs. And some of them have some idea, but you have to really drill down. So we're doing a lot of educational stuff as an agency, whether that's one-on-one with a client and we're educating them and it's trickling down through their network to companies, or we're doing seminars, we're literally coming to places like this and chatting to these people, or we're doing workshops one-on-one or with a group of companies. We obviously did one last week in London with James from ESL, where we basically brought down like 30-odd companies and tried to help educate them about esports. So we're trying to do our part, because honestly, I think the UK is one of the greatest countries in the world, and Birmingham is one of the greatest cities in the world. And we will have more events. I was, as I said earlier, I didn't think even a year ago or 2 years ago, we'd have events of this stature in this country. So it's absolutely fantastic, and long may it continue. And we're doing our little bit to help that along the way. Do you want this back? You really have to buy another microphone. We can't.
Rob, can I say one more thing on the education side? So there's one thing I'm really passionate about. You know, Ian was saying about challenging the stereotypes of people in basement playing games, right? And we were talking about this with James yesterday. So we're working with the National STEM Learning Centre, which is at York. So they talked to 115,000 STEM teachers who do CPD, and we basically went to them and said, look, guys, there's like this thing where you've got tons of data, and there's like millions of people who are really excited about data. They're young people across all social backgrounds, and increasingly also women and stuff. And it was like sort of like a watershed moment where they realized there's something really educational there about the activity of engaging in esports, because a lot of people don't just play. Obviously, they analyze, they reflect. And so we have a project going on where we create sort of easy-to-use data tools that allow kids to sort of tap into the data of themselves, of their idols and the pro players. And I really think sort of looking at this, what do you get out of it by engaging in sports? You get a social experience, you get physical fitness. At the end of the day, if you stop playing, you've got like a fitter body, you've got more capabilities that empower you outside of sports. And I think there's a lot completely under-recognized and understudied in esports about this mental fitness, right? It's about the ability of esports to foster something culturally that empowers people beyond just the sports, even though entertainment is important. But, this is something it's a drum that I cannot bang loud enough. It's so important that we promote this and look at this.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in there. I mean, one of the things that we find that esports does, it kind of creates this kind of acceptable, presentable and human face of video games. For a long time, we've always wrestled with, look at any games awards do, it often celebrates the games and the kind of unsung heroes behind the games, but the games are always kind of the stars. Go to the Esports Awards, it's actually celebrating human faces, stars. I went there and I had Heather next to me who was pointing out people I didn't know. I was very proud to have my photo taken with Dr. Disrespect. He was the only person I knew in the room. But nonetheless, there were a room full of stars that people were just sort of starstruck being around. And I think that's something that, that human and presentable face of games and the games culture is something really strong with esports. The other thing, Florian, you just touched on there, with our Digital Schoolhouse Schools programme, we did it last year, and it's exceeded all our expectations in terms of not just its academic kind of outcomes and improving interest in STEM skills and technology and creativity generally, but also that kind of those social skills and the social outcomes from it. Kids who were, without exaggerating, stories from teachers saying this kid was suicidal because he's been bullied. He went and participated in our esports tournament, and because of the confidence he gave him, he's a transformed person. And that kind of social transformation that esports can do for kids who may not thrive in traditional sporting environments or whatever it is, but we've got real tangible evidence how that can actually happen now, and I think that's something we should really shout about.
Great. We've got a few questions that have come in, so I'm just going to ask openly to the panel to answer. First one that I'm going to ask is, what's the general opinion of creating esports-specific venues against just using normal venues such as this one here, Arena Birmingham? Is the investment worth it?
Can I pick up on that? I genuinely, at arena level, don't think there's enough content to support a specific esports venue, and I think it's about how we adapt currently what we've got. I think there is potentially at a smaller level, as you've trialled in Haymarket in Leicester, and I think there's a value to that in terms of the developing the genre. I have seen reports where I think the amount of investment that it costs to build an arena level venue, I don't think it's sustainable right now. So I think that's why we think that esports forms part of our strategy. It's going to be a central strand to it, and we could potentially host many events throughout a calendar year, but we couldn't support the entire running of a venue on esports alone, I don't think.
I agree with Ian's point. I think there's in the last panel, one of the guys on there said that there's been a backwards history almost to esports as comparable to other sports. In other words, world championships, and now it's coming down the line. And I think as it does that, I think then there is an opportunity to do something which is potentially multi-use around other things such as VRAR, local leagues, arcade experiences, etc., etc. I'd agree with him. For the big ones like this, I can't see that there's a tenable solution, because people don't want it to be in one place all the time, I guess. To have them annually or quarterly or whatever still isn't economically viable. But I think on that kind of middle or lower scale, I think there is certainly an opportunity to do something.
Yeah, we live in a world right now where people are testing this concept out in Las Vegas. Basically, you've got like esports arenas that are basically disused, like conference space within casinos in Las Vegas, and they're being kitted out with the stage and the tiered seating and everything like that, and like a gaming area where you can just come in and play whenever you want. We have no data on that yet. They've only just literally launched it. You may have seen this Ninja thing. He basically did a tournament called the Ninja Invitational. I think that was their first event out of their venue. But I just don't, like right now, I don't see it personally sustainable, because, I mean, if you build one, I just don't know how often you'd use it. If you want to use a real world example in the UK at least, and I love the guys to bits, but Gfinity basically have an esports arena in London, which I don't think is used that often. They do obviously do events over the weekend, but during the week it's just a space that's not used. So I just don't know if the appetite's there yet, but it will be. It's a generational thing. As people get older, the people who are now growing up now, who are growing into esports and into gaming, and they love Ninja, and they're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, give it when they're having their kids, everyone's going to grow up and gaming's going to be accepted and it's going to be normal, and you could well have a stadium that's shared between a bunch of Birmingham-based esports teams who share a space, and that's the norm. But right now I think it's too soon, but it could well happen one day, for sure. I didn't mean to shit on Gfinity too much.
It's fine. In education, how are parental objections being overcome? I've worked with players in the past who have been told to stop playing, there's no future, etc. So I think Dan with Digital Schoolhouse, you're probably quite well placed to talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's something we faced. It wasn't that big a problem. There's sort of some guidelines we followed. Obviously, age ratings, we had to make it age appropriate and so on. I also think the evidence presents itself so obviously. As I said, we've had so much feedback. We did a pilot last year. And then did a bigger version this year. We had over 2,000 kids wanting to participate. We had more wanting to participate. And then some of the feedback we've had from parents, again, about, just the transformation in their children, the teachers saying there are massive upticks in academic achievement and so on. And we had the final at the Gfinity Arena, and there were so many parents there, again, sort of just having their eyes open. So the more you do it, the more evidence there is. It's not like we're trying to trick people into showing the positives of it. It's obvious for people to see.
I think it's definitely, you need to see it to believe it, isn't it? And I think that's part of, one of the reasons that we've been working with York and with Leicester is to let people understand that there is a plethora of jobs involved in esports and the organisation of tournaments and the production and the creation of the games with the data and that side of things as well. It's not just you can be a player. It's something to be inspired by, to see these players on the big stage, tomorrow and over the weekend. But there's a lot of opportunity for young people to not think, I've got to go and work in Sainsbury's, which there's nothing wrong with that, but, there's aspirational things to do, and gaming is obviously very popular, and I think, that's part of what UK do with Digital Schoolhouse, and I think it's a fantastic movement.
Rob, maybe it's worth bringing up that, the studies, there's not enough. Most of the studies about games and esports are about violence, because that's just media driven. But when you look at the studies with high volumes of kids, maybe one thing to break down the sort of parental concerns in esports is that everything up to an hour is actually found to be beneficial. It relaxes people, it makes them more social, it activates certain cognitive benefits and so on. So we can start there. And then think about, what if my child is more passionate about games, wants to play more? It's certainly probably not the right way to completely suppress it and let them do it in their basement and in sort of open revelation to the parents, but sort of create guidances and sort of formalized attitudes in schools to actually sort of usher people through if they're really interested and talented.
This question is for Ian, Daniel and Roy. Do you think the government and local authorities are offering the incentives and assistance the industry needs to build a healthy infrastructure here in the UK?
Shall I start from, from a Westminster point of view, then maybe it goes down to a local level. So we had a lot of debate around this over many, many months. It's still ongoing. As a emerging sector, it's always going to change, and the levers you might need to have pulled or not pulled will change. The consensus we're still at is that the best thing that government can do is nothing at the moment, which is good for everyone, I think. So that means in terms of don't start looking at introducing new regulations and laws at the moment. As I said up front, the ecosystem's already there. We've got the UK's got a really strong legal, business, and regulatory framework. I think what happened with the Gambling Commission, which took a pragmatic approach, which the UK authorities normally do to the issue, looked at how it fitted within existing laws without thinking, let's slap something else on. We've got to react to this. Let's change things that could actually potentially damage the sector. So at the moment, that's the kind of status quo. No regulation. Having said that, a bit of funding wouldn't go amiss. So if DCMS is here, that would be nice.
I guess I can lead on with the funding thing as well. I think I talk to companies across the tech and digital scale and organisations, and when they start talking of incentives in a number of occasions, the first thing they mean is what's the free money from local and national government, of which there is very little. And there's a very simple reason for that, is that money from local and national government is our money, belongs to everybody in this room, and they're not going to invest it into a tiny start-up or scale-up because there's a huge risk, or a bigger company because, frankly, well, why should they invest your money into a company that could go under? We've seen all sorts of companies go under. So in terms of incentives, I think there is... I think we are seeing more support from national government, a lot more support. They have the regional devolution, which is going on, which is moving a lot of support and incentives within the regions, such as the West Midlands or indeed Greater Manchester, etc. I think there are local organisations that can offer support and services as well. Everything I do is free. It's the first time in my life I've had a blessed relief of not having to worry about revenue being generated because I'm not measured on that, which is really nice. So I think there is stuff out there. I agree. I think there should be funding for organisations, certainly, to enable them to have a remit, a tightly defined remit around growing this. I agree with the comments about just lay off on the regulations and the scare stuff at the moment. But I think there's a huge amount of incentives and support for organisations out there, but it's just knowing where to look, and maybe signposting of that should be made more apparent as well. And I also think they should also help with the awareness of it as well, to be quite honest, of esports as an industry. 176,000 people in Katowice. I mean, that's just extraordinary. And I know that that'll go back to DCMS as a figure to show the value of that boost to any local economy would be huge.
I think that's the biggest problem or challenge to overcome, is establishing esports as genuinely as a sport at local government and national government level. I think subvention in the past has been available to support events that drive economic benefit into a city. That money just isn't there anymore, so it's about how we work together to work up a new commercial model. You know, when you go to a national government and a local government for funding to host the Commonwealth Games, as we've done, the money's there. So I think it'll probably take a bit more time, a bit more advocacy, a bit more lobbying before local government can be in that position of financing. I think what we've suggested earlier as well, are we doing enough as well? Can we improve our infrastructure? Can we look at ways that we engage with commercial partners? I mean, for instance, you know, there may be an opportunity for a naming rights partner to get involved that would be particularly interested in providing this venue for free, if you like. So if there's anybody in the room, we'll speak to you at the end of the session. So if there's anybody can help with that, you know, commercial sponsorship and partnership, I think, is essential, and that's how we're going to be able to make this industry grow. Very quickly.
I'd also, just add one more thing as well, is always ask. Because there's incredibly inventive ways to go around it, and look for opportunities as well. So again, this is just about the West Midlands, I'm sorry about that, but the opportunity for esports over the next 4 or 5 years here, I mentioned all the benefits of it, but Coventry is City of Culture in 2021. The Commonwealth Games is coming in 2022. So if there isn't an opportunity for esports to align itself with that and turn around to local and national government and say, we want to do this, how are you going to help us? And this is what we'd like as help. And there are ways around, rather than just looking for a grant that exists that nobody's thought of, is to ask for help in that regard as well and look for the opportunities that are there.
Lovely. Thank you very much to the panel. I think just quickly to wrap up, I think obviously actually the opportunity here in the UK is huge. We have we're in a really good position to come from behind actually and grow the industry here in perhaps slightly inventive ways comparatively to the way that the rest of esports is looked at globally. We have excellent businesses and educational establishments here that can actually foster a really healthy pro scene as well as the third-party services that we've been talking about so much. So yeah, thank you very much to the panel, and back over to Caroline actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much.